Israel says it will allow Egypt to deliver limited quantities of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, the first crack in a 10-day seal on the territory. Today is Thursday, October 19th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. Israel says will allow Egypt to deliver limited quantities of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, the first crack in a 10-day seal on the territory. Palestinians were reeling from a massive blast at a Gaza City hospital the day before, and growing increasingly desperate as food and water supplies ran out. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the decision on aid was approved after a request from visiting U.S. President Joe Biden. There were conflicting claims of who was responsible for the hospital explosion. Hamas blamed Israel, while Israel blamed a misfired rocket launched by other militants in Gaza, who denied any involvement. Within hours of a blast said to have killed hundreds at a Gaza hospital, protesters hurled stones at Palestinian security forces in the occupied West Bank and at riot police in neighboring Jordan. They were venting fury at their own leaders for failing to stop the carnage. A summit planned in Jordan between U.S. President Joe Biden, Jordan's King Abdullah II, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas was canceled after Abbas withdrew in protest. Arab protesters gathered in several countries to condemn what they saw as an Israeli atrocity. It showed how the fighting in Gaza is spreading anger across the region, alarming U.S. allies, and threatening wider unrest. Representative Jim Jordan has failed to win the vote to become House Speaker on a crucial second ballot. Next steps are uncertain as Republican lawmakers float other options. The hard-edged ally of Donald Trump appears to have no path to the gavel, but Jordan is refusing to drop out, angering some colleagues. A surprisingly large and diverse group of 22 Republican lawmakers rejected his bid Wednesday, more than the day before. Many view Jordan as too extreme for the powerful speaker's job, second in line to the president. Some holdout Republicans are talking with Democrats about an extraordinary plan to give a temporary speaker more power to reopen the House. A woman has been arrested after standing up at former President Donald Trump's New York civil fraud trial and walking toward the front of the courtroom where he was sitting. The woman retreated Wednesday after a court officer told her to return to her seat. A short time later, officers escorted the woman out and arrested her. She was later identified as a court system employee, but her name hasn't been released. She has been arrested on a contempt of court charge. A state court spokesperson said the woman had been yelling that she wanted to help Trump, though reporters in the courtroom did not hear her raise her voice. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has spent years disseminating false information about vaccines in a time when spreading conspiracy theories has become a powerful way to grow a constituency. The AP examined the impact of his work. A couple grieving their 12-year-old son described how a book co-published by Kennedy's group misrepresented his death. One mom delayed care for her autistic son because she believed Kennedy's vaccine falsehoods. An ex-lawmaker described being harassed by Kennedy's followers. Medical workers recounted how his work has hurt people in the U.S. and abroad. Kennedy's campaign didn't respond to requests for comment. Coalition forces were slightly injured in Iraq in a spate of drone attacks over the last 24 hours at U.S. bases in Iraq as regional tensions flare following the deadly explosion at a hospital in Gaza. 2 drones targeted the al-Assad base in western Iraq, used by U.S. forces, and 1 drone targeted a base in northern Iraq. U.S. forces intercepted all 3, destroying 2, but only damaging the 3rd, which led to minor injuries among forces at the western base. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq have threatened to attack U.S. facilities there because of American support for Israel. At a time when Americans are deeply divided along party lines, a new poll shows agreement on at least one issue: the United States' 2-decade-long war in Afghanistan was not worth fighting. The new Pearson Institute/AP NORC poll comes 2 years after the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan and the Taliban returned to power. 65% of Democrats and 63% of Republicans said the war wasn't worth fighting. Many have doubts about how successful the U.S. was at accomplishing specific goals, such as eliminating the threat from extremists or improving opportunities for women. One Republican respondent, Martin Stefan from Nevada, says the war was unwinnable from the beginning. The chief suspect in the 2005 disappearance of Natalee Holloway has admitted he beat the young Alabama woman to death on a beach in Aruba after she refused his advances, then dumped her body into the sea. New details in the killing emerged Wednesday as Joran Vandersloot pleaded guilty to extorting Holloway's mother. He sought $250,000 to tell the family the location of their daughter's remains. His confession appears to resolve a case that has captivated the public's attention for nearly 20 years. Vandersloot's 20-year sentence for extortion will run concurrently with prison time. He's serving for another murder in Peru. The NFL hadn't experienced a week of inept offenses like it did this past weekend in nearly a decade, with superstar quarterbacks Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen unable to generate even 20 points in their games, top defenses for Cleveland, and the Jets shutting down high-powered attacks from San Francisco and Philadelphia, and young QBs struggling across the league. The NFL had its lowest scoring week since 2014. Teams across the league scored an average of just 18.4 points in Week 6, for the lowest scoring week in the NFL, since Week 15 of the 2014 season, when teams averaged 18.2 points. When Giorgia Meloni took office a year ago as the first far-right premier in Italy's post-war history, many in Europe worried about the prospect of the country's democratic backsliding and resistance to European Union rules. But Meloni has confounded skeptics. She has steadfastly backed NATO support for Ukraine, especially on military aid for Kyiv against Russia's invasion. That's no small feat. Her main governing coalition partners are parties led by openly pro-Russian sympathizers. Meloni's campaign promise that she would fight Brussels didn't materialize. Instead, her biggest challenge is illegal migration. By mid-October, the number of migrants arriving by boat has almost doubled compared to the same period a year ago, to WHO's 140,000. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Thursday, October 19th, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.